What's up? How you doing? It's Jared, and this is a Boker Plus Balisong trainer. I did a video on this thing a little while ago when I first picked it up for my new EDC. It's illegal for me to carry around an actual live blade, and I heard a rumor that it's illegal for Boker to import live blades into this country, which kind of sucks because at the price point this thing's coming in like 48 bucks, is what you can find it for online. So an actual blade would only be like 75 bucks, and the materials that you get with this, the overall construction is done really well. I've been impressed with it, especially at that $48 price point. I can get it on Blade HQ right now. And so this is an excellent option. It's a good option for a mid-level entry Balisong. If you're actually interested in getting a trainer, if you want to carry something around EDC, because I keep this thing in my backpack. I was in line at the DMV for like 2.5 hours today, and I asked the guy, about 45 minutes, an hour into sitting in this line outside before I'd even gotten to a ticket. I asked the guy behind me, hold my spot in line. I'm gonna go to my truck real quick. I went in there, I grabbed this thing out of my backpack so I can just sit there and flip it in line. It's fun. It's a good way to take up time. But in that, this thing hit the concrete like 15 times today, if not more. Because I was going a little bit overzealous. People don't know if you're messing up with the trainer. You can be grabbing the blade and doing all sorts of crazy stuff. People have no idea that you actually would be cutting the crap out of yourself if you had a live blade. And so I may have been going a little bit zealous with it, showing off to some people in line. But it hit the concrete. This thing's been dropped. It's been dropped in mud. It's been beaten up. It's been tossed around. I'm not the easiest flipper. I'm not the best flipper in the world, but I like to do ricochets. There's some things that I'm not the easiest person on Balisongs, just because I'm not that good. So I'm constantly dropping them on the floor. I'm dropping them on hard surfaces. And I've been impressed with this thing holding up. It hasn't held up perfectly, and it does have some interesting quirks I'll get into when I actually go onto the table in there. But the number one word that my mind wants to go to with this Balisong is fat. It's how it feels to me. And I've got some theories on actually why that is, but it feels like the overall motions in the pivot area are larger with this knife than a lot of other knives, right? This is an 87 right here, 87 from Benchmade. Leave this one in. Yeah, but this knife is still fat. It's got that larger profile. It's got that much wider profile, but at the same time, it feels like I can actually get used to flipping a different knife now. It's got a different feeling in my hand. Not just the fact that it's actually a live blade, it feels different. It feels much more maneuverable. And this knife has a balance point that's about right there. It's right at that second hole is where the balance point is. So it is a neutrally balanced knife, maybe a little bit on the handle heavy side, but it's generally a pretty neutrally balanced knife. But it still feels fat. It feels like the motions are wider. It feels like everything in this area takes further to go around. Like it's a larger circle going around my thumb here than it is with this knife here, which is just a strange thing because my thumb, throwing knives at other knives, but my thumb isn't changing in size, right? There's not anything different going on there, but it's got a different feel. I don't have anything else that I can really compare this thing to. It is very individual feeling in the way that it flips. I don't know as to enough. I'm not a good enough flipper to actually say whether or not it is a good to medium to excellent flipper. All I know is I can do decent with it. I am pretty good with it. I'm definitely better with some of the other Balisongs that I've had, but I'm better with this thing, and this thing is more fun than that B400 trainer that I had a while ago. And I like the G10. I like the fact that it says 420 on the blade. It's 420 stainless steel blade. It's not really a blade. I don't know actually what you'd call that. But executive yo-yo. Who said that? Who out there can tell me who calls these things an executive yo-yo? It's somebody pretty prominent in the Balisong industry. I'll give you a hint. But I definitely like this thing. I just wanted to give you a little bit of it more of an impression of it actually in motion. My crappy little flipping skills here, my 6 or 7 tricks that I actually know how to do. I like the fact that it's a trainer because it does embolden me a little bit, but at the same time, you don't quite have that, that risk that you get with a normal blade, with an actual bladed Balisong. But I beat this thing up. I just wanted to show you a little bit of the actual motion. Yeah, take it down onto the table. I haven't done any serious maintenance on this thing yet. I haven't actually taken it down. But you can see here on these G10 scales, I like this G10 because it takes dings and dents, and down here on the end there's a whole bunch of little pop marks and all these cracks and things. But you can see that scratch. When that scratch was new, it was white. And you can kind of see some of these newer markings all over there, all over the bottom of this thing. It's really where it takes the most impact, is on the edge of these handles here. But it kind of heals, those little scratches in this red G10 fill up with all the oils and greases and gunk and stuff like that from your hand, and so it actually holds scratches on this G10 handle scales really well, which is nice because they are relatively soft. This isn't the highest quality G10 out there. I definitely notice a difference on this being easier to scratch than a lot of other G10 actually out there in the knife industry, but at the same time, it kind of heals itself, and it's actually, it's not very noticeable. The latch here, if I can actually hold on to this knife, the latch here does still work, kind of. It works well. Maybe if I can get it, it'll, see, now it doesn't even want to work. So it'll work to hold it in place like that, but any sort of little tap, little sort of motion, anything like that, it just falls off. I don't think there's enough retention on the actual Zen pins themselves around the blade to actually give a proper mount for this spring here. And I do believe that the spring inside this, in the way that this handle, this actual spring latch is designed, it's just too strong because it's steel, right? And I mentioned in the previous video here that in the 51, it's a titanium spring, and the way that it's designed, it's a little bit thinner. It's not nearly as tough of a spring in this design here. And so this actually still holds my knife closed. This is years old. It still works. I have to give it a decent squeeze for it to actually unlock. That's not the case with this here. It was like this out of the box, and it's just gotten worse and worse over time. You can see it sliding off there by itself. I wasn't even squeezing the handles together. I do squeeze them together a little bit, and it didn't even pop open. That was weak. See, it doesn't even pop open on the backside. So the latch itself, or the latch on this model, definitely left something to be desired, but I like the overall design of this knife. The balance point is right there. So it's right at that second notch in. Give you a reference to the 51 here. This is a Flightanium 51. It's actually a really bad example. Here's a 1601. Blade HQ exclusive, Benchmade 51. And so you can see the location. The location of the balance point on this knife is just a little bit further back, because these actually are right about the same size of knife, but you can see this Boker here is just a lot fatter. And what I was talking about when I said the feeling of being fatter in your hand, because the actual handles these handles are a lot wider than a lot of other Balisongs out there. Here's the Tachyon 3 from Microtech. And you can see it's just a wider platform of the handle, and it's much more flat, and so it feels like that in my hand. But the biggest thing that I've noticed is these two tang pins are actually further apart, because if I line up the tang pins, right, if I actually, hold on, close the knives down actually, but if I line up the actual pivot, right, I'll line up the pivot in this 51 right there with the pivot on that handle, right? So I've got the safe handles lined up. Look at the bite handle. Look at how much further off it is, right? These pivots are much closer together. And it's like that with all of my other Balisongs. See, if I line up that pivot right there, see, it's still just, it's further in. So the actual pivots themselves are further apart, lending itself to having that wide feeling. I think that's what contributes it to actually having that its own little individual feel and actually flipping through the air. It makes me think the word fat. It makes me think the word wide, because it just seems like it's taking more rotationary time to actually get to the same places, even though, it's not anything comprehensible. It's not like, oh, one takes a half a second and the other one takes a full second. No, it's nothing like that. It's if there is a difference in actual timing, it's milliseconds. It's not something that I'm noticing. It's just a feel that I get with this Balisong. And I've gotten kind of used to it. It's not like I'm the biggest fan, like, oh, I would take this over anything else. But flipping this thing as much as I do, because I'm walking down the trail, I'm sitting in line, I'm sitting in traffic. This is the knife that I go to because it's the thing on my backpack. And so I have grown to like it. I've grown a relationship to where I actually have an appreciation for how this thing moves through the air, but it's different than all of these other knives. Here's a 63, right? And this is more relatable in the actual feel of motion, you know what I mean? Because the handles here, it's a steel line handle with the G10, and you can see the size of that spacer in there. That's a steel back spacer, and it's in both of these, both sides of the handle, obviously, but it's large. I mean, it's a big, heavy piece of steel in the back of this knife, and so there is a decent amount of weight in these handles. The total weight of the knife, I believe, is 4.92 inches, and so it's just under 5 ounces for the overall weight of the knife, which is actually just a little bit lighter. This is 4.7 inches, or 4.7 ounces, excuse me, 4.7 ounces in weight with this half titanium design setup that I've got there. And I believe, this is 3.3 ounces. And so this coming in at 5 ounces, it is a heavier knife, but it's relatively neutrally balanced. And so I think that, again, leads to just it having its own individual feeling. That's one of the cool things about Balisongs is they're all so different. They've all got their own little nuances and own little traits that they, some of them do things better than the others. The inside of these actual holes here is a very sharp 90-degree edge all the way around, which is detrimental for the pocket clip because this thing snags in the material and does not want to let it go. This is a pocket ripper. Even though it's not a rough texture G10, that thing will rip the crap out of your pocket, but it gives you a good amount of grip. I've got a lot of actual grip in the spinning of this knife. When I try to, I'm not wanting for any sort of purchase in the actual rotation there, especially if my hands are sweaty. If I haven't been flipping this thing covered in blood, it'd be pretty hard to cut yourself on this thing. I'd probably figure out a way to do it, but I haven't figured that one out yet. But it definitely does have a good amount of grip. There's enough purchase there, and so I really do appreciate this Balisong, especially for the $50 price point that this thing is coming in at. Boker's definitely going in for a good market there because this is a good entry level, mid to entry level option out there because there's a lot of trainers that are just really cheap. You can find combs and you can find just really cheap clones and knockoffs and things like that, but there isn't anything out there that's a dedicated design with good materials that's actually been executed properly because you can see all of the crowning that's done all the way around the tang area of this blade. This bottom tang section here, both of the horns, all the way milled out, and it hasn't been carried through to the actual blade itself. You know what I mean? And so you can see where they've been trying to hit that price point, the things that they sacrificed because they didn't crown the entire knife. They didn't crown the inside of these holes or the inside of the G10. They didn't chamfer any of that stuff, but they did it where it was necessary. Where it was absolutely necessary to make a good flipper, to actually make a good Balisong, it's there. And so the attention to detail was put into this knife that I really do appreciate them coming in at the price point that this thing is with the materials that it has. I am definitely a fan of it. One thing is the necessary Loctite is pretty much necessary with this. That's actually the screw from a cold steel hold out one pocket clip is where I got that screw from because it came out almost out of the box. I did Loctite all of the other screws in this thing, and I really do think that's necessary because, again, meeting that price point, that's something that's really not done out of the factory for these knives, and you really want to be careful for that because if you lose the screws, I don't know how easy it is to going to be to replace these because Boker Plus is an overseas company. One of the reasons that it's hard for them to import the live blades. I hope sometime they actually figure out the legality behind that or actually able to import the live blades because I definitely like this trainer model here. That's my EDC Balisong Boker Plus. It's number 72, 420 stainless steel. So it's definitely a stain resistant steel. Look at the tip. That's taken a little bit of a beating. There's some asphalt on there, some concrete, tar. I haven't been deliberately mean to it, but I also have not been deliberately nice. I'll do a disassembly video at some point. That's it. Boker Plus Balisong trainer. Y'all have a good one.